Let's welcome Steve Bannon, former White House chief strategist. Steve's known as an architect of many of President Trump's America First policies. You were there then. I know you still talk to the president now.
I'm just his top student.
Top student. He mentioned that. He mentioned that.
But I'm his best student.
Well, either you have insight into how he's thinking, or maybe you've actually influenced some of his positions. Okay, you at least have an idea of what he's thinking on certain things, and you have your own ideas.
I think I know what his default positions are.
Okay.
Look, I think a lot of this, what you're hearing coming out of Beijing, is wishful thinking. I think what they're trying to do to a large extent is trying to game the system. They're talking about a two-step deal, and if you really look down below it, they're talking about maybe we break off part of, maybe 80% of the stuff was covered in Lighthizer deal, but we shove everything else off to something else.
I mean the security stuff. And
yeah. This is they're trying to box in Donald Trump, and I think Trump has been the force of stability here. He's been on point in this thing. He said, look, the Lighthizer deal was 18 months in negotiation. It dealt with a major restructuring of the Chinese economy to integrate it into the world economy. It's got those 7 verticals that they have to address. The tariffs are part of that. But remember, this is an economic war that Beijing has run against the West for 20 years. Donald Trump stood up to this. And I think if you really listen to President Trump and you listen to Lighthizer, they're talking about really we're staying on track on the major deal. We're not going to be gained by some two-step process.
But in terms of the timing, who's got? I mean, I know President Trump thinks he has the leverage, and he may actually, from a rational perspective. But you could also make the argument that the Chinese are willing to take the pain.
Look, the Chinese, I think President Xi said to a council inside of Beijing, hey, we can eat grass for 3 years if we have to. We're very tough. We did the long march. But the reality is, and this is, I think, the major shift in the Overton window that President Trump has had, we're not the declining power. He was elected president of the United States because the elites in this country had treated us the Thucydides trap, the Henry Kissinger, Graham Allison, that we're the declining power, they're the rising power. We have all the cards. Remember, in this economic war, the trade is just one part of it. We have a currency part, we have a technology part, we have a capital markets part. You're going to have the head of the SEC on today, and I hope that you start to really ask Jay Clayton from Sullivan and Cromwell some tough questions on Sarbanes-Oxley and other regulations that are on American companies, emerging growth companies, but are not on Chinese companies. So this war, economic war, has many aspects to it. Trump has been, I think, the rock of Gibraltar on this. He's been so stable in saying, hey, here's what we want. And remember, there's a big reformist element inside of China that worked with Lighthizer and Peter Navarro for 18 months to get. They understand they have to restructure this economy in a major way.
We had the former Prime Minister of Australia, Kevin Rudd, on with us earlier this week, and he said that the hardliners are circling right now in China. He thinks they may be in the U.S. too, but especially in China. And there's these two camps between what you mentioned, those who are willing to go ahead and make a compromise and the hardliners. He said, if we don't figure something out, probably by the end of the year, it's going to be a long time coming, because after the beginning of the year, both sides have things that they have to start worrying about in the immediate future. The election.
I do agree. I think this is why when they looked at the deal in May, I think a number of the hawks, I think led by Wan Shishan and others, looked at this and said, hey, this is a surrender to the West. They're basically between transparency, accountability, and enforceability, which is the tripod that this deal is based upon. We can't sign this. I think that this is a long-term process. We're going to be in this kind of armistice about this economic war, I think, for a long time. But here's the thing. Not only has Trump changed the dialogue, I think he's opened up to the world that the United States, the American capital markets, American companies, the American market is where you want to be. This is a safe haven. This is the
national anthem in the protests in Hong Kong.
Listen,
what's going to? I mean, that wasn't happening when the deal broke down in April.
If people think that millennials are just no accounts, look what's happening in Hong Kong. These are young kids on the street fighting a totalitarian regime for capitalism. Right? And if you see how they're taking, they're being gassed, they're being tear gassed, they're having rubber bullets shot at them. They actually testified on Capitol Hill this week. The mainstream media is focused on Corey Lewandowski and the circus of this impeachment process. But at the same time, you had Joshua Wong and others, these young kids from Hong Kong on Capitol Hill talking about it. Beijing does not want to address. I think Hong Kong is the key that picks a lock. So far, President Trump has been appropriate. He's risen above that, so they can't blame him on being the black hand of the CIA and back of to it and not seeing that this is really an uprising of the Hong Kong people for the rule of law. But if you want to see, look, the great story in the first half of the 20th century, I think, is going to be the freedom of the Chinese people. The Chinese people are the most hardworking in the world. Only they can bring their freedom. But we have a totalitarian regime that's about to celebrate their 70th anniversary. That's not an anniversary the United States should be celebrating, right? That regime has killed more people than any regime in history.
But do you understand the president pushing off the additional tariff hikes to the 15th so as to offer, I guess, some goodwill in the negotiations? So it's not on the anniversary of this.
Yes, Becky, I think, look, he has gone out of his way to be accommodating and trying to do something that, look, he's trying to do something that actually works for the Chinese. That deal of Lighthizer and Peter Navarro's was very systematically thought of to integrate them into the world economy and to really free the Chinese people who have essentially been slaves in the manufacturing process. I think it's foresight, and I think just Trump's just been the rock. And I think all this happy talk, there's going to be a two-step deal, they're going to buy a few more soybeans. Trump, I think, has been very adamant that, hey, there's a deal on the table. We want to go back and start looking at that deal. And one thing I think that China's going to do is what the Shanghai communique. One of the tricks I think they're going to pull is to try to get some deal that's so general, go back to the original deal, but get in language that's so general it can be interpreted by both sides. Yeah. I don't think Trump takes the bait on that either. Remember, the CCP, they are experts in barbarian management, right? They know how to incentivize elites in tributary countries.
Hold on, Andrew. I'm sorry. I just got to get to, is Warren the prospective nominee at this point, or is it still Biden?
I don't agree with Matt Drudge yet, but I think if you look
yesterday he said that if you look at to lose.
And Matt's got a tremendous sense of news, but if you look at her speech down here at Washington Square Park, which was quite dramatic, it's really Trump light. I mean, now we're seeing, if that's the case, you're going to have populist nationalism versus populist socialism. She's taken many of her speech is really Trump light, and to the fact taking Peter Schweitzer, my partner in government accountability, and talking about the Stock Act and insider trading and things like that. So I think she's clearly defined where the energy is. I think Biden, because of China, and I think this is why Trump has shifted this discussion, and China is going to be the framing device for the 2020 election, the geopolitical concerns of the nation.
That was my question, though. Do you believe that the Trump base looks at China the way you look at China, which is to say, if you're a farmer, a soybean farmer, or anybody else in the middle of the country, I think there's a lot of people, I imagine, and maybe I'm wrong, I think you're going to probably disagree with this assessment, I would imagine that they can think about it theoretically, but beyond that, they're looking at their own wallet and saying, I don't know.
I think it's the exact opposite. I think when he saw America in decline, we went to this is how we pierced the blue wall. If you go to Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin, you don't have to come to New York, where I have to actually walk people through why Schwartzman now has religion on CNBC. He says, oh, yeah, they've had 20 years they've been doing this, right? So the Wall Street's starting to get religion like Trump. On the campaign, if you go up there, people know the factories and the jobs all went to China, and the fentanyl and opioids came into this despair of not having jobs. So you can speak in shorthand. In Michigan, in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Iowa, the upper Midwest, this is why Donald Trump's president. Remember, immigration was an issue, but when we would go to the upper Midwest, it wasn't so much we build the wall, it's where are the jobs? Bring the jobs back. And that's what this is about. This is about shifting the supply chain back to the United States. It's why USMCA, nobody's talking about it. That's the first strategic. Remember what Trump's done just this weekend. He's got the Mexican-Canada deal, USMCA, which makes us a geostrategic manufacturing base, North America, with Mexico. You've got the India deal he's talking about, and Japan. The pieces on the chessboard are coming together, and this is the industrial democracies now working together to move supply chain.
He's doing what the critics have been saying all along he should have done, even the ones who agree it should be tough on China, get the rest of the globe together to be on your side.
And this is why they say get the allies together. Look at Trump even on Iran. What he's saying, and I think where he's going on Iran, is a full economic boycott, an economic beyond economic sanctions. I think you're going to start to hermetically seal off Iran from capital markets. I think it's going to be part of the China's discussion. I think China's going to have to. It's going to be a quarantine, and I think Trump. Everybody wants him to be John Wayne. right? President Trump is strong enough that he doesn't have to be John Wayne. He looks at this as a businessman. He knows these sanctions are just a first step. He can go further. You can start to hermetically seal off Iran from food, from loans, from everything. And I think it's going to be part of the Chinese discussion. China's got a $400 billion deal with them on oil. I think they have between a $10 and $50 billion credit line. This is all going to be put on the table as he starts to ratchet up the pressure.
This is one of your quotes. The 2020 campaign will go down as the most vitriolic and nastiest in American history. It's very simple. When you say we, you're talking about Trump. If we win, we save the country. The margin of victory in some of the swing states in 2016 was fairly narrow, was it not?
Fairly narrow. We drew an inside straight. It's 79,000 votes. It's 79,000 votes in 5 counties.
How does it look? How's the hand being dealt right now in the swing states look for the president?
It's going to be a grind. President Trump has got to get these swing states. Look, Arizona's in play. North Carolina's in play. This is going to be a grind. He's got the entire mainstream media apparatus. When I said vitriolic as before the Civil War in 1860, look at the Kavanaugh thing. A op-ed in the New York Times that may have not been edited properly. You've got presidential candidates hitting the bid right away. We've got to impeach him. We've got to impeach him. Supreme Court justice. Look at President Trump. Look at the Corey Lewandowski fiasco the other day. You've got Joshua Wong and these young people from Hong Kong testifying. Mainstream media don't want to cover it because they're all about the impeachment hearings, right? This thing is going to get so nasty that I think a lot of people are just going to say this is too much. But, you know, President Trump's a closer. That's why we won in 2016. He closed. Hillary Clinton didn't. We won, quite frankly, with very thin margins in these states.
But it's not in the bag.
Oh, it's definitely not in the bag. This is going to be a very tough. President Trump knows that. That's why he's very focused on his efforts. He understands that. Now, look, you could have a Reagan-type victory if things go your way, but I think it's sticking to what the program is, sticking to its policies. That's why China's going to frame this. You can already start to see what Biden's weakness, and look at Elizabeth Warren. Yeah. One of the reasons I think Kamala Harris has dropped is she's been kind of all over the map on China. You know, Elizabeth Warren she came out with the white paper. She's now trying to get to the right of Trump, like Marco Rubio and others, on China. And I think China's the framing device because it means bringing back manufacturing jobs to the upper Midwest.
Love her or hate her policies, she's genuine and sincere about her belief in those policies. Yep. Kamala Harris, I was never sure whether it was really that sure of. So I think Elizabeth Warren might be formidable.
But the people are going to make a decision. In an era where you've got the mullahs, you've got the situation in the Persian Gulf, You've got, I think, just as tough a situation in the South China Sea. You've got China now working with Pakistan, working with Iran, working with Turkey, working with Russia. You see the Eurasian landmass. Who do you want as commander-in-chief? You want Donald Trump, that's very stable and ratchets up, or Elizabeth Warren? The American people are going to make that decision.
Thank you for on set this time.
Great to have you on. Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good to see you.